Oh, why, thank you, YouTube. All right. Hello, everyone, creatives, community, kind folks, collegians and classmates, and everyone out there. If this is your first time visiting the channel, I'm DBJ. This is RPG with DBJ. And this week, we talk about dragons. Today, specifically on Wednesdays, is World Building Wednesday. We're going to build a world where dragons have dominated. We usually take a subject, stretch it out all week, subdivide it by each day. Monster Monday, we have a Discord Tuesday. We kind of talk mechanics a little bit. World Building Wednesday, Third Pillar Thursday, My Love Child, where we talk about the third pillar of exploration. And of course, we have Future Friday, where we talk about the modern day all the way into the far future, just because I'm such a fan of science fiction, tabletop role-playing games. But today we're going to talk about dragons. Now, just to continue the preamble a little bit, if you want to participate in the chat, please do. We appreciate all the comments and constructive criticisms and ideas, tossing them around, sharing a slice of digital pizza. But if using YouTube is a little bit problematic for you and you would just like to listen in on the show, we simulcast over at Fantasy Grounds College Discord. So we use Discord as an audio format. And if you are a person who uses or is a fan of using Discord itself, go over to Fantasy Grounds College Discord and slide past all the classrooms and the administrators and your other fellow classmates and go down to the boiler room. We hang down there because that's where all the cool kids are at. All right, so yeah, right. So one of the I have two YouTube chats going. I'm gonna have to get rid of one of them. All right. Sorry, I've got two chat windows open. I want to ensure that I have the proper one available to me so that I can read them. Yeah, Dead Man the Storyteller says you have to threaten to leave YouTube. Yeah. Maybe if I had like millions of subscribers or something like that, they'd be a little bit more forthcoming with the stable broadcasts and whatnot. So, all right, let's get into the dragons. Let's talk about the dragons. Of course, yes, dragons represent all of our fears wrapped up into one thing. Dragons are a little bit of nearly everything in classic role playing. They are a small bit of demonic and celestial. They are a little bit of a beast. They are giant classed creatures. Individually, they are almost harbingers of an apocalypse, simply by their mere existence. They are the type of creatures that if one exists, you better watch out. When you have multiple ones, the world's going to change. They are they have a little bit of divinity in them. Their existence seems to predate many things in many game worlds, almost as if they have come before even the gods have existed. They are elemental. So there's so many parts of dragons that much like Eldritch Horror and Cthulhu, they exist kind of amongst themselves, but a little bits and pieces of everything else. So why in our setting, because we're going to do world building today, why would the dragons have dominated the culture and the landscape and the way people live their lives? Is it that the dragons have used the weaknesses of mankind and finally taken over? Were the dragons once the saviors of humanity? Maybe Vecna or a powerful lich, and it's hey kitty, and it's necrotic horrors and undead armies or something wanted to spread like a virus over the world, like a blanket of undead, and the dragons help save humanity. Or maybe there was a major conflict amongst the gods themselves that came down to the earthly planes, and the dragons protected, humanity, maybe seen as the saviors. An eldritch horror came from the deepest reaches of time and space, and simultaneously out of the deepest parts of the ocean, and the dragons were there after humanity called upon them. Or maybe the dragons took the time to usurp the power that they saw the weaknesses in the earthly realm. The people were disillusioned with their gods. The people maybe the people were, the warlocks and their patrons were at an all-time low or something. The dragons took over. Now, Deadman says in Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, Council of Worms, dragons had to hibernate regularly to advance their age category. Now, the idea of dragon hibernation is it's a thing that we accept as a dragon physiology, whether it's caused by magic, meaning like dragons periodically, like you said, they have to sleep in order to age, much like maybe a kind of a incubation period, or a growth period that maybe tires them out, or it's emblematic of their power and growth if they've lived long enough. Every 500 years, when a dragon has the opportunity to really take its long nap, they know that they're gonna get bigger and better. They're gonna get more powerful. Maybe like a roided out person exercising and getting enough sleep to let those muscles just like micro tears in their muscles grow bigger so they can advance or whatever. I don't know, but in the context of the world, maybe there was a period of time where enough dragons, strangely enough, worked together. Tiamat and Baphomet finally worked together or something to advance dragonkind before their long sleep. And whatever the case might be, let's imagine a world where dragons have dominated. Now, we could make the case that maybe the gods do not exist. There are no eldritch horrors, that every corner of the world and all of the external planes of existence are instead inhabited by dragonkind, which would you can still do this because there would still be conflict maybe amongst the dragonkind because of the animosity the chromatics and the metallics have against each other, or it could run across pseudo-political lines, i.e. Alignment and agenda, that the neutrally aligned dragons just want to have stability. The evil dragons want to dominate more land and more territory, fighting amongst each other. And maybe the goodly dragons are trying to appease the jealousies and the avarice and the greed amongst all of the other dragonkind. Or maybe it's possible that it wasn't until the event that had the dragons obtain their vast power. Hey, Janet, salute to you too. Maybe it wasn't until the dragons obtained their vast power that we didn't get the split amongst the dragons. Like maybe the flags that they put in the ground of their particular alignment and type didn't exist until the dragons took over, and the greens decided, like, well, this is going to be our area, the forest. The black dragons were like, well, fine, then we'll take the swamps. You want to kick us over here, kick us to the curb and kick us over in the swamps? Fine, we're going to make that our haven. And the gold dragons like, everybody, please, what are you guys doing? So now the dragons have taken over, and considering some of the traditional behaviors dragons have, the hibernation, the long-term outlook in life, we can decide how much impact the dragons have on a daily basis. Deadman Storyteller says in Dungeons and Dragons, Bahamut has worked with Tiamat a couple of times to fend off dragon slayers, but it always ended the same way. Tiamat betrays Bahamut, which in this case may be the very thing that does happen. But you guys know me. I'm a fan of playing in the middle, right? Sure, Tiamat always betrays Bahamut, but what about the 200, 500,000 year reign of dragons that happens before that turn happens, right? So maybe they do work together and they air quotes save humanity from the horrors from itself or from externally. Maybe the dragons are the ones that came in to stop one of these other major world changing events. I don't know. They stop Cthulhu from taking over or something. They stop an incursion from the blood war spilling over into humanity or whatever the case might be. So enough generations have gone by and all the people know that there are these dragons and they're dragon lord lieutenants that, rule the countryside. Now, could there be dragons who are like, listen, guys, I hired you guys to keep everything in order. I'm just going to take a nap for a little while, but I'll be back at random periods of time. Is that a possibility? Like a blue dragon out in the desert is sleeping, but the blue dragon's agents are have enslaved people or dominated the landscape or are in search of ancient artifacts from the fallen kingdoms that have come before, after the dragons have devastated so much landscape and so much of the population. I think that's a possibility, and that's a good way. That might be a good way to still keep dragons a bit special, but have their agents walking around as if they know what the dragons want. Because if the dragons are absentee leaders, the arrogance of their lieutenants might be ones in which they assume what the dragon kind wants simply by the fact that they were picked to perform certain jobs and things. And we could take some of the using our reskinning skills, we could take a lot of creatures, stat blocked creatures, and just reskin a bunch of them, like Nagas and Dragonborn and lizard folk and kobolds, and hell, you could take ogre magi and rakshasas and other creatures like that. And if you really, really want to embrace dragon kind, just reskin them as being like dragon blooded. And in many ways, you could have the PCs live in a world where it's kind of half cult, half political affiliation. Like, oh, you're one of the blue, or look at you with your copper insignia or something like that, and embrace dragon kind as not just being leaders, but being almost a philosophy of behavior and action. And I think that'd be kind of cool. Now, of course, you could get into a rut where, hey, all of the people that are part of the Black Dragon cult all seem to act the same, and you might not want to have that. Whereas the PCs, of course, are free will; they can act and choose and behave in any manner in which they wish. But the paladin who came from the Black Dragon region or Black Dragon blooded there might be some strings pulling on that character. Like, you need to come back to us. You need to, what do you think you're doing serving the golds and silvers and stuff? You need to belong back with us. I wouldn't use those same phrases like gold, silver, and blue and stuff like that. But finding some really cool descriptors would be an excellent way of doing it, especially if someone doesn't know that the paladin that's serving the silver came from the Black Dragon cult or whatever, especially if it's literally in their blood or their capabilities of how they use their powers and stuff. Now, how humanity acts and reacts to these dragons that have taken over is also a way for us to figure out what the players are going to be doing in the world. Are they in service of the dragons? Meaning, like, Do they believe in them as divinities like a cleric would? Is it a prid, whatever? You guys know what I mean. My brain is getting it's a little fuzzy right now. It is it a is it like a warlock pack where give me power and I will serve you in the end, that there's an exchange of capabilities? Is it simple money like mercenaries, or is it out of loyalty or honor that the PCs serve one or multiple dragon kind and work together to achieve a particular goal, maybe putting down uprisings, like working together to put down undead legions and get rid of demonic incursions, or stop rebel uprisings. Now it's possible they could be doing this and then realize that the uprisings actually have a point, and the PCs may do a hard flip and go, "Ooh, we've been serving and supporting these draconic uh, empires, and maybe they need to tumble." Which, on the opposite end, the PCs could be a rebel faction. They could be a rebel faction of, say, tertiary dragons like Steel, Void, Shadow, Gemstone, whatever other kinds of dragons you want to, brown, yellow, chartreuse, mauve, like we mentioned yesterday, periwinkle. They could be those kind of serving those kind of dragons as like a third tier rebellion, or maybe the other powers working in the world are the rebel faction, the pantheon of gods that have been forgotten. Maybe the PCs are, one PC is part of that, where another PC is part of a celestial or fiendish order, and the dragons have, despite them not agreeing with each other, they very much work together to stomp out any. It's like, hey, we can hate each other, but if these outsiders, we can crush them right now. And so maybe the rebellion is a PC that's part of a celestial order, and a PC that's from a fiendish order might be working together simply to get rid of the totalitarian governments that the dragons have set up. Now, there's a couple of other methods that could be going on, meaning, of course, PCs might be, in this blasted landscape that the dragons have come about. There may be some that are supporting the goodly dragons, the metallics, to overthrow the more insidious evil dragons, and then reshaping, reforming, reskinning some of the capabilities that the player characters have. For example, you could imagine a paladin order of every single of, say, your top 10 dragon types, right? You've got your 5 chromatic, your 5 metallic, and there may be paladin-like abilities that they have dedicated to each one, whether it's changing the damage potential that, instead of a smite from a paladin being radiant damage, that damage might be from the dragon's order, which would be very easy to reskin. Same thing with like an eldritch knight, martial type character, or a barbarian's rage might be shaped around that particular dragon, maybe growing scales and claws, or maybe their skin tone changes, and instead of like animal totems, there might be dragon totems in your world. I mean, if you really want to dive really deep into it, you could really reskin a lot of the magics and things. It's the same thing for wizards. Maybe learning, maybe the various types of dragons are extremely protective of certain types of magic. Evocation might be the blue dragon, and abjuration might be the gold dragon or something. And to learn different types of magic, you may have to go to be taught from their schools, or find someone who's willing to teach you magic from them. And others will see where that magic comes from. Like, I see you learn the spells of the ebon dragons of the deep swamp, or something like that. Well, you'll learn to regret it, or something like that. Or we'll have to find out who it was that divulged our secrets, wizard, and we'll take it out of your hide or whatever. Like you could really play up narratively, play up a lot of the classic threats and things thrown around, which this brings me to, mechanically you can change a lot of things and reskin things, but this brings me to some of our social interactions. Although this might make warlocks seem a little bit ubiquitous or a little bit mundane, in this world, the idea of having a pact with a dragon or dragon kind might be very common. In other words, the PCs might be face to face with dragons and dragon kind on a semi-regular basis in terms of getting instructions, being threatened, given orders to perform certain things, missions, to go to maybe there are these vast city states that are scattered around the blasted twisted landscape that exists in this world, and the PCs may have to present themselves to the kings and queens, draconic kings and queens in this various land. They could be performing any kind of duties like protecting eggs that have to travel between these city states, or organizing rebel factions in terms of having different rebellious cells or something, or leading prisoners from one place to another, especially if you want this to be a morally ambiguous world. Slavery may be a thing, or even feeding the dragons innocents, that people living in pens much like cattle being fed to the dragons, and the PCs may be going around capturing, or in the past the PCs may have captured people living in the outskirts and living in small villages and hidden away in the deep reaches of the world, and then capturing them and enslaving them and bringing them back, much like the classic idea of the pharaohs and the evil pharaohs, and using their people to build vast monuments to their glory and their divinity and such. Same thing may be happening with dragons. I can imagine a lot of the arrogant dragons having people, build things to honor them, to feed their arrogance and feed their egos and such. I can imagine that happening oftentimes. Hell, even the dragons that just like, play me some music, and the people are all scared because they're tired. Their fingers have been bleeding because they've been playing music for hours and days and weeks on end without rest. And the dragon, someone hits the wrong note, and dragon's eye just looks up and is like, "You to the pits," and they're like, "No, bring in the next minstrel." And there's like minstrels sitting outside like, "I don't want to do this. Play me a song there, minstrel. You, everyone else, dance, be happy. Why aren't you happy?" Everyone's like, got these smiles pasted on their face. I don't know. It would be pretty nasty. And I think in a narrative sense, the lieutenants having their own agendas or their own assumed responsibilities when the dragons are sleeping, and the PCs getting in touch with them, or even the PCs sending threats to the other dragons by means of the dragons that they serve, would be pretty interesting as well. The PCs confront the copper dragon, and they're in service of these other dragons, and they're telling the copper, like, you need to move your people away from, I think coppers, I don't know where coppers live, but it doesn't matter. They could be telling them they either the copper dragon has to leave, or its agents have been captured, and its territory is being cut up and given away to others. And the copper dragon's like, "You dare come in here and threaten me?" And then someone like throws down like a symbol or a medallion, or even like they pull out of a wagon the severed head of one of the other metallic dragons and toss it on the steps of their temple or whatever. Just like, yeah, you're gonna have to get the hell out of here. And the copper's like, "Arr, you'll see what happens when we come back." Like, yeah, whatever, blow it out your ass there, copper, get out of here. I mean, that may be a thing, and they may come back. And of course, despite the classic good versus evil, there's also petty jealousies and things amongst the evil kind amongst themselves. The goodly dragons may have different methods on how to solve a situation. The golds may think, oh, we've got thousands of years, let's take our time. The silvers might be like, look, no, I'm going to polymorph down into humanity and work with them right now, because we're going to go after them now, and we're going to do hit and run missions. For every time we don't swing a sword and sever the head of the evils, we're saying it's okay for them to exist. And then the other dragons might be like, I just want my own little space. I'm just going to carve out my own little territory. You guys do whatever the hell you want. So there very much could be those kind of things. Now, moving into, into the blasted environment, I say that because how cool would it be to mix and match and use and abuse the regional effects and dragons' lairs and make that the entire landscape of your world? So there may be almost no safe place for humanity to live, just these little crevices, little hidden areas. And many of those might be dominated by the dragons themselves. So for humanity, for the free people to move from place to place, it ain't just cold. It is frigid cold with like random blizzards and frozen landscapes and there. And just when you leave the frozen landscape of the tall mountains and stuff, you go right down into the deep valleys. When you come down from the high altitudes of the mountains and go down into the deep valley, and the minute you get there, it's almost like a hard line where there's just overgrown jungles and forests, and the green dragons dominate there, and the very foliage is alive and it's poisonous with thick thorns and filled with insects, and it's just oppressive. And that would be a great way to embrace the exploration pillar, in my opinion, that third pillar, by saying, you know what, in this world, it's not just boring hex crawling. Like there's a good chance you're probably going to die from trying to cross the vast deserts or thick jungles or swamps or beaches and coastal areas or oceans and whatnot, because at a moment's notice, the dragon's regional effects and lairs are very active in the world. So there aren't just red dragons living in volcanoes. There might be volcanic ridges where there's like 13, 14 blasts of lava and stuff. Now, Rickard says, so have we talked about dragon clans yet? I hit upon the idea that the players and there might be governments run by individual dragon types, but having dragon clans and how those dragon clans are done, it could vary very greatly. For example, the worship of the dragons I mentioned and a desire to serve the dragons may be a thing, whereas maybe another part of the world, the dragon slayers have dominated a class of dragon types, meaning like they're not true dragons, but they're wyverns, worms, serpents, drakes. They may be dragon-like, and maybe humanity has domesticated them, and that might be a spitting in the eye of the sentient, the more intelligent dragons, rather. It might be a spit in the eye of them because they may not consider them to be true dragon kind. Very much along the lines of like lizard folk, dragonborn, kobolds, troglodytes, Sahagin. Like they could either be embraced as like children of dragons, or they could be cast out as being of inferior blood, almost like accidents in a way, and they could be cast out. So you could have like a for and against, and of course those in the middle, the neutrals, might be like, look, there's the only way we're going to survive in a world that's been ravaged by dragon-like regional effects and dragon layers scattered all over the world, is that we're going to need a good way to travel, which might be anything that flies. Nah, we're saving Shadowrun for Friday. but yeah, dragon CEOs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're going to save that for Friday. But having how humanity deals with dragons and how much relationship humanity has with dragons, well, I think would be a cool thing. Meaning, you could very easily, I think, reskin your standard character. I mean, not character, racial types, and give them dragon blood and making them dragon blooded. Not just dragonborn, but like, for example, your classic dwarf, living in the mountains, squat, wide, tough, could come from whatever dragon type lives underground or something. And maybe elves come from silver dragons, let's say, or halflings or something, or gnomes could come from green dragons. Like, you could say that they have the blood of those dragons in them, in their veins. And that narratively, that might be kind of you're part of the family. And that's another great way to have a little bit of conflict. Like, hey, my half orc has the blood of, what's a good dragon? I know orcs tend to be green, but maybe that's a black dragon kind of thing. But the half orc doesn't want to be part of that, wants to leave their blood behind. Yeah, yeah. I hear you, Rick. Earth Dawn. Yeah. I don't know much about the background of Earth Dawn, but Earth Dawn, the role-playing game, deals itself with a lot of dragonkind. And I believe there was another role-playing game. See if I can remember the name of it. And I cannot remember the name of it, where every PC, you played a PC dragon in the role-playing game, and they had shape-shifting and various other capabilities. And it took place in modern day. So the PC was a dragon that existed in modern day and walked around as human beings, much like the White Wolf games using vampire and werewolf. You were like a were-dragon of sorts. And now, I've talked about a little bit of the social interaction, talked a little bit about the exploration when it comes to, and talked about some of the clans and loyalties or disloyalties. There could be a lot of backbiting in terms of like the types of games you could run, whether it's espionage, the espionage, and meaning like disguise, bribery, theft, the interrogations, dissemination of secrets, or Scott, what's going on there, man? The idea of spreading rumors and lies, especially if, let's say, a particular dragon is actually quite sick, or in its hibernation stage, or is about to give birth, or has been injured in a vast battle and has come home and needs to rest to heal its wounds, but the population doesn't know that, and the enemies on the border don't know that yet. And if they knew, then this particular empire would crumble, or maybe not empire, but like part of their community would crumble. And that itself might be its own mission, even if it's like, maybe if there are a handful of blue dragons, but the one blue dragon that was harmed in a battle with a patrolling clutch of other dragons goes back home, and the one PC that's in loyalty to that blue dragon is like, I can't let this information get out at all, because if they know it, they're going to take over my blue, and I can't let that happen. Deadman the Storyteller says Earth Dawn was 4th world. Shadowrun is 6th world, with magic shifting between high magic and low magic. Deadman beat me to it. Yeah, I didn't. I knew there was a relationship, but I couldn't remember what it was about, like 4th world. Now, like Earth Dawn and Shadowrun, there could be, maybe there are ancient texts that talk about the rise and fall of dragons in terms of their appearance in the world. Game of Thrones kind of hint upon it as well, in terms of like the the disappearance of these great worms to the point where people don't even think they exist any longer. They're just a myth, and even dragon eggs are just like, you know, oh, what are those things? They're just giant stones or whatever. They're not anything. And then the idea that they've come back. So maybe there are sages who have this information, and the dragons don't want people to know that. They don't want to know that at some period of time in the future that they'll have to leave this world, for whatever reason, whether it means they have to physically travel somewhere, or the vast amounts of magic that is required to even keep them alive might be something that starts to diminish over time. Or it could be that it's not feeding on people or materials, but it's feeding on the magic. And again, the cycle may happen where the dragons start feeding upon each other, because having too many, the magic from the world, and in order for any single one of them to exist, others gotta go. It might be like Highlander or The One, where at some point after they've dominated their lands, it's like, okay, there can only be one, you know. Rickard says, reason I brought up Saturn One, even though it isn't Friday, is that it's a good case study of dragons are OP, and how the world would turn out. Instead of corps, you have nations in a fantasy world, and like corporations, you have nations in a fantasy world. Yeah, dragons are, we talked about this yesterday, guys, and I suggest that you check out the episode for Discord Tuesday about dragons, meaning like dragons are extremely overpowered, and I think for good reason. Dead Man and Storyteller says, and there's approximately 5,000 to 6,000 years in each cycle. Yeah, I think the reason that dragons have such a world changing thing, changing presence about them, is because they simply are overpowered. They are and should be incredibly hard to kill, incredibly hard to deceive, to wrangle, to attack. It should be something that requires it requires so much that preparation and bravery and skill and power, that the taking down of a dragon really should be something that should be held special. And by making them overpowered, or not even making them, but by having them use tactics in a manner in which will reinforce their overpoweredness, I think is something that I think it should be encouraged. I understand that it may not be very fun to for your barbarian with his axe standing underneath a breath weapon of a dragon and sitting there like, yeah, this sucks, right? But the thing is that if you're that lone, yes, in storytelling things, we have the one lone knight go confront the dragon and slay the dragon. But maybe those rumors of the one knight doing it were spread by the dragons themselves to go, you know what? If we just get them go one-on-one, we could, and their best and brightest warriors, we could kill them off one by one and not even break a sweat. So yeah, armies taking down dragons, I think, is a thing. Catapults and ballistae and magic and rituals and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think it should be, these are like once in a lifetime events. So I think those should be encouraged. Yeah, I'm dude, I'm so with you. Like Rickard says that at that point though, why are you having your players fighting dragons? Do you want to kill them? Exactly. Like at that point, if you're going to bother because we're talking about World Building Wednesday, right? The dragons are everywhere, or figuratively, they are everywhere. Now, in this world, is there only a single dragon representing each dragon type? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe there are only a handful of dragons representing each colored or species type. or something. But even if that is the case, if you were going to introduce dragons, the first thing that players are going to want to do is kill a dragon. It's the first thing they're going to want to do. So layering the steps it would take to get to the point where dragons can be killed, i.e., Dead Man saying there's a like 5,000 to 6,000 year cycles with dragons. There's a reason why they hold sway over such large areas, especially if you foreshadow the power of a dragon. For example, maybe the PCs they are about to visit a small city state or something, and it's like a walled area, and they're traveling down protected roads or something, and maybe a dragon attacks that city, and you foreshadow the power of that dragon by having it, use its breath weapon on the walls and watch the walls disintegrate, or burn or freeze and shatter, and you see the armies and the guardsmen and the yeomen and whatever assemble on the castle walls, shooting their arrows, and they're just pinging off the dragon's hide. And then maybe the dragon has magic or uses his tail to whip across one of the towers inside the city state, and the tower falls down or something. And then you just look at the PCs like, you want to fight that? And they're all looking at each other like, yeah, no. Now, on a metagame side, there still might be some players that are like, yeah, I see you describing the power of a dragon, but aren't all dragons supposed to be like balanced out for our party level? And that's a metagaming thing. You might have to like have a sit down in session 0, hold hands and like have everyone close their eyes and say, okay, listen, everybody, I need you to understand. These dragons will kill you. Rest assured, I do have a world where you guys will be able to obtain the skills and power and allies and everything it'll need to take a dragon down. But I need to let you know that they are killer and they will kill you. Like you might have to have a coming to the ascending the steps of Mount Olympus idea with the PCs. Like, listen, you're going to have to. If I'm going to have to send a bunch of your characters to the pearly gates, I might have to do it. Scott Post says the one night is the last one left. The dragon died of exhaustion and eating too many other nights. The last night began the epic solo night rumor. And the dragon's like, I've got gas. Oh, those other nights were like, oh god, what is that? An ulcer? Oh, I need some Tums or something. And that one last night is like, I'm going to kill you. Yeah. I need an antacid or something. Belch, burp. Oh man. Yeah. Died of exhaustion. Maybe like maybe that one dragon is like, 38 of you guys, really? I'm the 39th, really? Weren't you just in the background holding the banner? Just go home. I'm tired. Which in many ways could be a thing, right? That may be a weakness of your various dragons, exhaustion, the hibernation stage of a dragon may be its weakest point for the PCs to fight a dragon. Or again, maybe in your world, the sleeping dragon is one absorbing far more arcane energy to bring itself back up to its power level. If I'm not mistaken, in Tyranny of Dragons, I believe there's a cult that's trying to summon Tiamat into the world. And if the PCs are successful in circumventing one or more of the various cults that are trying to summon Tiamat from different areas, you can reduce Tiamat's power. This may be a thing in the world, right? There may be elements in which you could reduce the powers of the dragon to the point that it is killable, that it is in its severe exhaustion state or something. Much like exhaustion, the exhaustion condition for PCs, maybe there's a way to externally create an exhaustion condition onto a dragon by affecting its outward its outward protectorate, right? I don't know, like um, a red dragon that lives in a ring of fire, like a caldera or something like that, maybe um, causing an eruption, or bringing about cold or something like that might give it drain some of its abilities while it's sleeping inside of the volcanic liquid or something. And then maybe there's a magic item like an ancient, like one of those dragon orbs from like second edition. I believe they've extended to fifth, if I'm not mistaken. But I remember the dragon orbs or dragon rods that can control them. Maybe it's not quite mind control, but it is something that you can obtain that drains their power from some of the ancient kingdoms that once dispatched the dragons and ruled over them. And so, the classic Tolkien slash Beowulf um, weakness in the dragon, the place where the scales do not cover that one little wound or something, or the dragon slaying arrow, which I think was taken from Tolkien and turned into a magic item, constructing a dragon slaying arrow slash spear slash what have you weapon and putting it in a ballista and aiming it at one of these dragons or something. I mean, the quest to create one and the agents that find out you're trying to obtain the materials to create one or uncover it from an ancient kingdom in itself might be an adventure before you even get it to the point where you can then find a ballista, put it in its proper place, and then aim at a dragon that's heard about this thing. Scott Poe says, does Tiamat have a different cult for each head? 5 different complex rituals to free her from the abyss once again? I don't know. But it makes sense to me. And again, is Tiamat a devil? Not exactly, but she is. But then they imprisoned her in the, what is the first layer of hell or something? Dragons are so much a part of, and then not a part of the rest of typical traditional Dungeons and Dragons mythology. And like Bahamut, I believe, hangs around the celestial, the upper planes as well. So I could very much see some of the other dragons maybe having allies from the other planes of existence. Each of the dragons with their own alignment, pulling beings from those other planar alignments as their allies. So Tiamat might have devils if Tiamat exists in this world as a physical being. Maybe, I don't know, one of the chaotic good dragons, has like a lot of fey creatures maybe, or maybe it's very much related to their earthly environment. The black dragons have jungle-like creatures. The red dragon has flaming elemental creatures under its sway. Tesla Ranger says 5 rituals are needed to summon Tiamat. For every ritual that is prevented, she shows up missing that particular head. That's how it works. I've never read the adventure, so that makes perfect sense, right? Where the white dragon head, the cult of the white dragon, has been defeated and could not make the ritual to summon that head. When the PC's Tesla Rangers is just an idea, not canon. Oh, I automatically assumed it was. So it's too late. It is. So the idea of having a ritual that summons Tiamat and the white dragon cult has been defeated. Maybe Tiamat is summoned here physically, but the white dragon head is only seen as like an ephemeral illusionary image with no physical power behind it. And the PCs might be like, oh, wait a minute, she's got 4 heads. Maybe now isn't the time to fight her. Now that she's here, we can go after the other cults, and prevent her reign that way. And who's to say that the other dragons don't have a similar styled weakness in terms of cutting off their power? And you could even establish, I know this seems a little bit too cooker cut cookie cutter, but maybe, just maybe, the rituals that support the power, as during their hibernation, the power that allows the dragons to be here, if you're able to use a counter ritual or disrupt them, that a dragon will lose its breath weapon, it'll lose its wings, it'll lose its intelligence, it'll lose, maybe it starts losing bits and pieces of itself, including its thick hide and all that kind of stuff, and losing bits and pieces of itself until it gets to the point where mortal beings can really come and destroy it or kill it. Much like Dead Man was saying about the cycle, and you guys are talking about the hibernation effect as well. Maybe the opposite of that is to prevent a dragon from hibernating, and it can reduce in its age category, or something can be done to reduce the dragon's age category, shrinking it down, making it lose its power. Maybe its wings start to be molted and start to have holes in them, like rips and things like that, as it starts to age. As the dragon ages forward, it's literally gaming wise reducing its age category, without achieving its great power and stuff. So that might be a thing as well. Maybe the oldest dragons, the most ancient of dragons, we never knew that they actually start to get older and decrepit, and they start aging down the age scale, in terms of humanity and elderly people, and their bones start to get brittle, and they start to lose their teeth, and they don't fly as often and stuff, and they're just trying to hold on using legends and mythology to hold on to the power that they think they possess before another dragon comes along and attempts to kill them. That, as a matter of fact, strangely enough, this might even be something that other dragons don't even know about. So the younger dragons coming up are like, I'm going to be an ancient worm and I'll rule forever, not realizing that, wait a minute, what? I'm not going to be this way forever. I'm getting older. And that might be something, maybe it's similar to the birds and bees talk amongst dragons. Like, I'm going to have to pull you aside there, little youngling, and let you know that, yeah, you see this size that you are now, you're going to eventually shrink down to that size and be a mere shadow of your once great self if you live long enough. And maybe dragons have never lived long enough to even realize that. So that's another way of playing against a type or a weakness, especially if a grand temple, was formed in a jungle, like along the lines of like Aztec, the Aztec natives, and they're living in a jungle, and the green dragon is almost avian like, with colored feathers around its head, and the PCs have to climb up into the temple only to realize that like it's barely a shell of its former self because it's so old, and the people have never, I'm not going to go into the dragon's haven, you go in. I'm not going to go in. Get Mikey, he'll do it. Maybe they're just like, I don't know. And when the PCs get in there, this dragon could barely move. Dead Man brings up the Stellar Dragon from second edition D&D Spelljammer. Yeah, there were, I think, Stellar Dragons, Void Dragons, Shadow Dragons. I think there might even be like a Dream Dragon. Of course, there's Fey Dragons. Pseudo Dragons fit into that as well. There's pseudo dragons and fairy dragons. But hell, there's probably if you go along the third party realm, I'm sure you could find there's all the gemstone dragons. I'm sure there's all the other tertiary metallic dragons. I'm sure there's probably more ephemeral dragons. Maybe you could go for dreams and rage, illusionary dragons. I'm sure you could go pull out a ton of them. And frankly, I think to incorporate a lot of them, you might have to world build with dragons anyway to even do it. So guys, thank you very much for being for supporting me, being here, hanging out, just this listening in. Scott Post says, you're gonna literally, seriously, dude, you're gonna make me pronounce that? Um, Kazaquatl, Ka, Ka, Keatzalcoatl. I can't pronounce that, but you guys see it in the chat. Anyway, it's still kicking around. An encounter with a super ancient, somewhat senile worm could be neat. I think so too. I think maybe what we think dragons are, just call them Q. Yeah, yeah. Maybe what we think dragons are is the mythology that the dragons themselves have created all this time to make us think that they are as powerful as they are. And maybe all of that is not true, meaning like the idea of the dragon being being so dominant physically, flying, blasting people, using magic, and being undefeated. Maybe those are like 1 in a million type of events, whereas it's maybe they just go nova to prove their power, and then when they leave, they're just like, ooh, to the layman, they've just destroyed a big city. To the dragon, they're like, I can't do that in another 100 years. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that. Tesla Ranger says Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl. Thank you very much for that. And I probably butchered that as well. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for hanging out. Who am I? I'm a contributing writer to Critical Publishing. What do I do? I talk a lot, an hour a day, 5 days a week. So if anyone out there who's new, who just found this channel, support the channel in any way. Your time is valuable, and I intend to try to give some change back. So guys, thank you very much. Support with liking, sharing, subscribing, getting notifications, joining the Discord, hanging out with the people who are far more intelligent than I am, the people who hung around sharing a slice of digital pizza with me on a daily basis. And I really appreciate all you guys, man. So thank you very much for it and giving me the motivation to do this on a daily basis. So I love it. Guys, everyone have a great day. I'll be in the Discord for a moment or two, and then got to get out of here and head to work. So guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Bye.